It's the startup music.
The startup music. Welcome, everybody.
All right, we got 41 people.
Yeah, we see that
Fantastic.
the numbers are climbing up. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes, but before we get going, oh my goodness, the numbers are climbing. Welcome, everybody, to this very exclusive event. Most of you know Richard and know me from prior webinars, etc. But this time we are super lucky to have from Toyota, one of our dear friends and colleagues, Tom Lego, joining us today. Thank you, Tom, for doing this. This is a very unique opportunity. And the genesis of this is that for the longest time, again, we have been extremely lucky to work with our friends at Toyota Material Handling, teaching workshops at Toyota Material Handling. And Tom and his team have been very generous in providing us with presentations on the Toyota production system and tours around the line, and also Q&A sessions. Well, we decided to try again this year, and because last year we just couldn't make it happen, of course, for obvious reasons. But we realized that trying to do the same, teaching the class 27 hours of materials, it just wasn't going to work. Many of you were going to probably faint in front of your computer. So we decided to do, frankly, the best part, which is Tom's part. What we're going to do is Richard and I are going to do a relatively short introduction, around an hour. And after that, we're going to transition over to Tom and his team, and they are going to do what they normally do for us when we're teaching on site. They're going to do the introduction to their plant, the introduction to the Toyota production system. That's the day. Tomorrow, we're going to, again, do an introduction ourselves. And then Tom and his team will do a tour of the plant from the process point of view, showing you how the different parts of the product come together. And you will see the Toyota production system live. And on Thursday will be, again, our introduction. And then Tom is going to give us a tour from the material standpoint, which, quite frankly, I mean, I love the way they build product, but I frankly believe that the way they manage materials is head and shoulders above anything you can see anywhere else. So anyway, that's the genesis of how this happened. And since I've been talking nonstop, let's go ahead and go through introductions. I am Gerard, principal with the Leonardo Group, and with me are...
I'm Richard Rahn. I'm Gerard's partner. We've been working together for more years than we want to admit, probably, at this point.
I had hair.
Yeah, I had hair of a different color, I think. So, but we were very compatible, I think, right, Gerard, with our... with a lot of things, but with our perspective on lean. And I think we share that with Tom as well. The way we look at the world and the way we look at process improvement. There are a lot of choices out there in the world for the method that you pick, right, to improve. A lot of different philosophies and strategies. But this is the one that makes most sense to me, and I think to Tom and to Gerard too. And so this is what we'll be talking about for the next 3 days. So I started my journey back before lean was lean, before the term lean was used, was in common use. And the company I was working for, an aerospace company, sent me to a class, probably like many of you. And I just fell in love with the topic. I'd never heard of it before, but it just seemed to make so much sense that I obviously made a career out of it from that point forward. I kind of changed direction from being a material manager, so that is my background, to getting into this world, and became a full-time consultant about the same time that Gerard did, around 1994-ish. Maybe you were a little bit before me, Gerard.
I'm a 93 vintage, you're a 94 vintage.
Yeah, so it's been a while, still exciting. I think Tom would agree with that too. Tom, you've been in this for a while as well. but still exciting. There's always something new to learn and always something new to improve. So it's been a great career and a great journey, and happy to be here with you to share it some more. Right? Keep talking about it. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to talk with all of you today and share certainly some of the things that we're doing here at Toyota. We're quite frankly getting a little bit lonely here. We like having lots of guests here. Typically, we have several thousand guests that come to visit us over the year, and the Leonardo Group has been here at least a couple of times a year with teams, and we hope that returns here soon, because we certainly like putting faces and names together and getting a chance to show the things that we do. We build material handling equipment here. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You're going to know a little bit more about it. But I think that as we go through today and tomorrow, you'll start to see our dedication to really doing relatively broad types of products in small quantities and small deliveries and a lot of the things that we're doing here. So it's a little different than our counterparts on the car side that do a lot of mass production in huge quantities. The concepts are the same, but we do a lot of customization. So we'll bring that element and questions you have. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to hopefully at some point in time having all of you come and visit us. But we'll make the best of it today with some virtual presentations and material. So have a great day. I'll turn it back over to Gerard.
Sounds good. So, Richard, what do you say we get that PowerPoint started so we have a bit of a background, wallpaper to blabber? So, what are we talking about? We're going to be talking about mixed model manufacturing and using mixed model manufacturing as a strategy, as a competitive advantage. That's our goal, and we'll dive a little bit into the agenda in just a few seconds. So, who's talking to you today? Again, a couple of introductory comments. Richard Rahn is a principal with the Leonardo Group, and he is in charge of our manufacturing practice. I am Gerard, principal also with the Leonardo Group. We have only two principals, and I am in charge of our hospital design practice. Tom Lego, whom you just heard from, he's a Toyota ambassador, and behind the camera we're going to have Tricia helping us with the presentation. Couple of things. If you have any issues with the connection, look at the top of the screen. You can have a restart button. Because of the speed at how things are going to move, we're not going to be able to answer too many questions for connection. This is not being recorded like any other of our webinars, so please don't ask for a replay. It will not happen. All right. If you have any questions, especially for the Q&A session, please post them in the chat box. We will put them all together, and we're not going to be able to answer them all. We'll do our best, and we, as in Tom, but we'll do our best to select the most relevant ones. And if we see repeats, we're only going to pose one question at a time to Tom. We are on the honor system. You saw that we're asking you to please do not attempt to record, and please also, if you're a competitor, this is your chance to click exit. All right. Soon we are going to be switching to Toyota's system, which is Microsoft Teams. We will provide you with a link in just a few minutes, and at that time we will give you instructions on how we will meet you there. You know, the idea that Zoom and all these platforms are working great, not really. We're going to have to use two different platforms today, but we have tested it and it should work. So what's our agenda? What's the goal for our presentation today? If we could go to, the schedule. Day one, as I said, we just got started, and we're going to do our intro, but we're going to discuss mixed model manufacturing from the standpoint of a strategy, what to do with it. We're not going to be able to teach, all right? We're not going to teach mixed model line design. For those of you who are members of the Lean Design Studio, you are going through the training. All the training is there. For those of you who are not, well, this is your chance to go ahead and sign up and become a professional member. All right, so then Tom is going to do the introduction to the Toyota material handling plant and also to the Toyota production system. That's the day, and then we're going to, Richard and I, bring it back together to wrap it up in 5 minutes or so. Tomorrow, again, intro and tour from the line standpoint, and Thursday, intro and tour from the materials point of view, and the Q&A session. The Q&A sessions are by far our most popular features when we teach on site. So you definitely want to stay here for that. So that's for the schedule. What is that we are wanting to accomplish with this event? With this event, what we want to do is to talk about mixed model manufacturing as a business strategy. And sorry, Richard, I made a change, so I'll let you control it. Mixed model manufacturing as a business strategy is a competitive advantage. See mixed model manufacturing in action at Toyota, led by Tom and Tricia, and also promote and drive the awareness that this is very important. Mixed model manufacturing is very important, knowing, learning how to design the solid foundation that is mixed model line. That is how Toyota does it. Kaizen, very important, but you cannot Kaizen a broken line to high levels of performance. So that's our goal, is to explain mixed model line design, mixed model material management, and make it clear that those are your competitive advantages and part of the mixed model manufacturing business strategy. So,
okay, so
go with this.
Yeah, so to get started, it makes sense to kick off what we mean by mixed model manufacturing. The term mixed modeling is kind of self-explanatory, isn't it? So when someone says mixed modeling, you kind of have a sense of what is meant. And that is simply what we're saying here. The ability to build multiple products. They have to be similar, but multiple products on the same production line and do that well. So by well, we mean efficiently and with low or zero defects, and be able to deliver all the materials, which is not a minor detail, to that line to build those products and get them in the hands of your customer. Now, this is what most companies do, to be honest. Mixed model manufacturing, especially in manufacturing companies that have stayed in the United States as opposed to going overseas over the last 20 plus years, they tend to be mixed model environments. So again, this shouldn't be a surprise, but the issue here is that many companies that are doing mixed modeling don't do it that well. And so the reason they don't do it that well is they're not using a methodology, a step-by-step roadmap or method, technique for actually designing those kind of environments. So that's what we mean by mixed model manufacturing. Includes two wings of a bird. We'll talk about this a little bit later on, what the feathers on each wing include. But the two wings, or two main aspects of mixed model manufacturing, are designing the workflow, the work that people do, the operators, the workstations, and then the materials that need to be delivered to each of those workstations. So materials and workflow are the two aspects. And when we say design the perfect value stream, so that's a pretty strong claim, right? Designing the perfect value stream. What do we mean by perfect? Well, if it were perfect, truly perfect, there would never be any opportunity to make it better, and that's simply not the case. But pursuing perfection, what we mean is productivity, so we don't have a lot of wasted time, or time not so much intentionally wasted, but time in that environment where workers can't work because they don't have anything to work on, or because they can't move the material, move the product out of their station because they're blocked downstream. So we want to overcome those things. And that's a real risk in a mixed model environment. That's a serious risk, because you have different products with different work content, and the ability to just level that workload is basically zero, right? You have different products and different times it takes to build those products. And that's one of the biggest challenges then. Highest possible quality, I think we're all in agreement on that. So error proofing every work step is part of the task at the design stage, not later on, but at the design level. We want to make sure we think through everything that could go wrong. So FMEA approach or way of thinking, and design it out at the beginning as much as possible. And then inventory, we use the word optimum. We don't say minimum because there is this fine line between running out and having, just enough. And running out could be worse than having too much, to be honest. Because when you run out, you're actually impacting the entire line. Whereas if you have too much, you're impacting your inventory levels and your working capital, but you're not slowing down production. So,
and you will see when Tom explains and shows materials management to material handling, it is actually an excellent example of how to manage materials in this interconnected world, right? When you bring materials from Japan and China and India and all kinds of places, you cannot be running with razor thin inventories. But what you can do is to optimize it, right? But to get the most out of what you're bringing in. And on this definition of perfection, I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that where it says all the way at the end to receive a payment, because we want to focus on the entire cash conversion cycle. That is for very mature companies, but Richard can attest to having done one specific, and I have in other places, but one specific project that we use sometimes in class, where after working with all the manufacturing stuff, he helped this company focus on the invoicing process, right? And treating the invoice as the product and reducing the time to sending that invoice and getting paid substantially. So don't lose sight of that. This applies not only to the manufacturing stuff, which is very important, to the manufacturing processes. Let me be a little more proper. The manufacturing processes, but materials, very important, but then the administrative processes associated with the manufacturing processes.
So you'll notice if you look online, look for a definition of lean or lean manufacturing, you'll often find a definition that says something like a methodology or philosophy organized around the elimination of waste in a process. And the thing is, if you go back to the source documents, the founders of the Toyota production system and lean, and even back to Henry Ford, their focus was not so much efficiency or eliminating waste. It was that time aspect that Gerard just touched on. So Taiichi Ono, and we have a quote of him saying this, and straight out, that the goal of the Toyota production system was to reduce that timeline, the timeline from receipt of order to receipt of payment, as much as possible. Now, eliminating waste is a prime technique for doing that, right? For reducing that timeline, but it wasn't the primary focus. It wasn't the main objective. The main objective was, what can we do without rushing, without making mistakes, to reduce that timeline as much as possible? And we've adopted that approach, that way of thinking as well.
Yeah, we are the flow guys. We focus on the flow. All right, so enough for definition. And we didn't invent this. What we can take credit for is having put together a methodology that is teachable. You can learn it, you can apply it, you can implement it, you can make it your own. That, yes, we take credit for that. But to suggest that we or anybody that we know invented this, that'd be ridiculous. Of course, people attempt to give it different names, and agile and lean, this and that. Frankly, if anybody's going to pick a name, I would say call it the Toyota production system, because they are by far the most successful ones. But we, being students of this, not experts, students in this, we of course do our research, and you will find, if you look for it, examples of the use of linked and balanced processes. That's what a mixed model line is. Linked and balanced capable of building a mix of products in history. And there has been written documents from Dr. Womack on the application of these techniques to shipbuilding back in the Middle Ages. Clearly, Henry Ford, who can deny the fact that using linked and balanced lines to build product, but then you can go into Chinese pottery, you can go to the Colt factory, and you will find the use of linked and balanced processes building products with the goal of building them one at a time. So from the process side, that's the goal, link and balance. Now, from the materials side, we can also look at other historical examples.
Okay, so the other picture is a easily recognized vehicle, one of the first ones, the Model T, Henry Ford's vehicle. Now, prior to that time, now we're into the 20th century now, and not the 16th century, but prior to that time, cars existed, but they were typically made kind of like Airbus builds airplanes. They were built by craftsmen in a fixed location. And so any parts and materials had to be delivered to each of those locations. And if you wanted to build more cars, increase the volume, you had to have more spots, right? And more places to have to deliver material to. And so prior to Henry Ford, there were craftsmen building these cars. They could kind of hammer part of their toolkit was a big old sledgehammer to get all the parts to fit together.
File, don't forget the file.
Yeah, files and hammers and, to get the doors to close properly, etc. So that would be hard to do in a flow line. You had to basically have parts fit together well for the most part. And so Henry Ford is recognized as being a pioneer in this idea of an assembly line, where you break the work into pieces, and a worker doesn't have to know how to build the whole car. They just have to know their job, right? Their piece of it. And maybe it's just putting on the right front wheel, but that's their job, and they would typically do that. Of course, they can rotate, but they would do that as their job all day long. And so the result then of building products, or in this case, cars that way, is that the efficiency, the cost of these cars drop like a rock, so that they reach the point where a worker on the Ford Model T line could actually start to afford to buy one of the products that he or she was building. So this was a great breakthrough, and pretty much this is what we do today, right? Very similar approach, where we take the work, we understand the work in detail, and we organize it into pieces, which we're calling stations or workstations. And the goal here is to flow that work from start to finish, so those products can move one at a time, one car at a time, down the line, including feeder lines, right, that come in and are connected to this main line. And this is pretty much also what you're going to see during your factory tours here at Toyota Material Handling, is the same approach that was pioneered by Henry Ford more than 100 years ago. It's been refined, but the basic concepts are pretty much identical. Now, moving forward, we have the material side of things.
Yeah, and the dude that you see there on the left-hand side of the screen, not that particular gentleman, but I grew up with that. I grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and we had a real milkman come to the door every day, count the number of empty bottles, and leave us full bottles in exchange. And that is probably one of the most efficient ways to deliver materials. What do you need? Here it is. What do you need? Here it is, right? And the folks at Toyota were able to give it a name, and the Kanban system is probably one of the most efficient ways of delivering materials, but they didn't stop there. And you will see as we discuss the topic of materials with our friends at Toyota that they not only do Kanban, they also sequence parts, they also provide sets, and they also do quite a bit of kitting. The other one you see to the right is a picture of the Model T engine. And then again, this is another example of delivering one at a time, in which the Dodge brothers are reputed to have delivered those engines, which they were the first ones to build engines for the Ford Motor Company, and deliver them in horse-drawn buggies one at a time on a pallet. Give me a pallet, I give you an engine. Give me a pallet, I give you an engine. So those are some of the early examples of materials management for a linked and balanced line.
Do you remember the story, Gerard, of why Henry Ford was so specific in the specifications for the crates that the engines would come in? And the Dodge brothers were kind of curious, like, why are they being so picky about the kind of wood and the dimensions and every little detail of the wooden crates that we ship our product to Henry Ford in? And so they sent an industrial spy to go find out, what's going on, like what's happening with these crates, because they don't come back, right? They're not being recycled. And so they got into the Ford plant, and they discovered that the wood in the crates was being disassembled carefully and then being used as floorboards in the Model T Ford. So that was pretty clever. So he was getting free work. Now, Tom Lego, there's an idea for you. I know that Toyota is recycling your containers, but maybe there's a way of leveraging that idea as well and getting something out of that. Okay, so let's continue on. Lots to talk about with materials as well. Now, there are people involved in this whole movement, say since the early 20th century, the whole lean or Toyota production system movement. I know the Gilbreths are one of your favorite couples, Gerard.
By far. The two pictures you hear, Frank Gilbreth and Lily Gilbreth, who deserves a lot of credit, and Frederick W. Taylor. Frederick Taylor, everybody likes to talk about him because he wrote quite a bit, and he was one of the nastiest men to ever have walked this earth, but he was a genius, so let's give him that. So he was very much into parsing the work and working on standardization.
You're saying he competes with Henry Ford?
Yes, they were birds of a feather, and the reason why I absolutely love Frank and Lily Gilbreth is because Frank is the opposite to Taylor. Taylor was a rich kid who studied in Switzerland, while Frank was the son of a bricklayer, and everything he learned, he developed with his own brain by working, starting as a bricklayer. And he's, by the way, the original, real, bona fide chipper by the dozen. He did have the 12 kids. He died young at 44, I believe, who wouldn't with 12 kids. But anyway, and he died young. And Lily, his wife, carried the torch and continued to teach the methods that Frank delivered. So that they are definitely one of my heroes and the fathers, the parents of my profession, and so is Taylor. I am an industrial engineer by training, so I do owe him a thing or two, or maybe 10.
Now there's a link between Frederick Taylor and the Toyota production system that may not be well known, and that is that he wrote his best known book called Principles of Scientific Management in 1911. Well, it turned out that there was a tour of the United States by a group of Japanese industrialists around that time, and they managed to get a hold of this book that had just been published. They brought it back to Japan and had it translated into Japanese, and guess what? It became a bestseller in Japan. Yeah. Now, this isn't after World War II. This is 1911, 1912 time period. A bestseller on principles of scientific management, meaning standard work. So some of that must have trickled through, I would have to believe, to the Toyota production system as well. But this is something like, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of that book, almost a decade ago, or a decade ago. So interesting kind of a factoid for you there about Frederick Taylor.
Not a nice man, but definitely a genius.
Okay, a couple other people to mention, give credit to.
Absolutely. Dr. Deming, PhD in mathematics from our fair city of Boulder, Colorado.
Oh,
You know, I don't think I need to tell you much about him. Definitely a giant in more than one way, and greatly admired in Japan. Unfortunately,
yeah. I'm gonna steal some of Tom's presentation thunder if it's still in your presentation, Tom. But one of the more memorable quotes from W. Edwards Deming was, if you can't explain what you're doing as a system, you probably don't understand it. And so, or if you can't explain it to your grandmother, right? You don't understand it.
And of course, Taiichi Ohno, who is reputed as the father of the Toyota production system, definitely another giant among giants. And you will learn through Tom's presentation about the Toyota dynasty. With folks with last name Toyota, you will see that Ohno was standing in on the shoulder of giants too. Definitely a force to be reckoned with, but he didn't do it alone.
And he didn't have an easy time introducing his ideas, even at Toyota back at the start. He admitted that it was a struggle. It took him many years to convince people. And he said one of the biggest opponents of his vision of creating a river system or a flow system, one of the biggest opponents were the finance and accounting people, who looked at this. And that's still yeah, still happening. But the way that they were applying overhead didn't really match his vision of how things should be run. So anyway, he did not have an easy time. People did not embrace his way of thinking easily, but he prevailed, right? Didn't give up.
And definitely many more names, right? You can go to John Deere and other folks, many more ways. And when people talk about or like to blabber about the Toyota production system and call themselves experts, by the way, this straight from my friends at Toyota, when someone calls himself an expert in the Toyota production system, running the other direction. And since that day, I started calling myself a student of the system. And they love to talk about the elimination of waste and Kaizen, right? And what you're going to hear from us is that all that's important once the foundation is solid. And for that, because we both have architects in our family, we'd like to equate this to, building your dream home, right? How do you go about building that dream home? Do you buy or build a house without a foundation and hope to improve it by incremental improvement, or you start with a solid foundation? It is not possible. I wouldn't say not possible, but it will take a lot of time and frustration to take a completely disastrous design and try to Kaizen it into high levels of performance. That will take too much time, too much frustration. It's much better to start from the beginning, design the line properly, and then you use Kaizen to bring it to higher levels of performance. But first, you need to take that step function. So from the standpoint of the house, foundation, think foundation. Right, Richard?
So if you renovate your house, either as a big project or over time, you're still going to have basically the same house you started with, but improved, right? So you're going to have a better house. There's no doubt about that. But it's going to be difficult to get to the actual dream home that maybe you have in mind. And that's kind of what we're faced with when we try to incrementally improve a production environment that already exists, right? Can we make it better? Of course. And that's the whole principle of Kaizen. But if you really want to make it better, a better approach is to start with a blank sheet of paper. Now, you may not be able to implement that perfect design if you're starting with something that already exists, but you're going to get much closer to that dream home that maybe looks something like this. This is Gerard's dream home. Could be mine too.
This is my idea of a dream home.
Yeah, the modern dream home. If you Google dream home, you'll find lots of choices. But
But the majority of the projects we do, the vast majority of the projects we do, are on existing lines. What we tell them is you can tinker around the edges. We redesign the line completely and then apply Kaizen. Again, please don't misunderstand me. Kaizen is very important, but if we had to look at proportion, it's 90-10. It's 90% the foundation, 10% will be the Kaizen improvements going into the future. Now, will you ever now and again hit on a big $1 million idea? Yeah, rarely. The real gold will be on a well-designed, well-linked and balanced line. That will drive you to that dream home or to that high level of performance. Or
okay,
you could
and
end
if you
up
don't
with
have
something like this.
yeah, if you don't have a process, right, or a good methodology, you could end up with something like this.
If this is too American a pop cultural reference, please Google The Money Pit. The Money Pit movie with Tom Hanks, they're screaming, and Shelley Long. And that's the story of a couple that's doing really well and finds an inexpensive, a cheap mansion. And what happens with the mansion? Well, the foundation wasn't that good, and the movie is just a series of gags of how many things go wrong. And again, I think that's a great movie to see for anybody who wants to become an expert or a practitioner of Lean or the Toyota production system.
Okay, so this is a list of things that can go wrong if we don't do it right? Don't do it right the first time. I don't think we need to read this, point by point.
No, you guys can read, but definitely what can happen is that you design or you have a line that was not designed. So you never calculated the number of resources. Do you have enough? You don't. It's not properly balanced, right? Or the stations are not ergonomic, or you're planning to build batches, or it's so imbalanced that you end up with constant waiting and a blocked line. But the one that I want you to focus on is all the way at the bottom, the one that says loss of trust. Ask your sales guys if you think that your manufacturing organization is an asset or not. Is a burden or a competitive advantage. Then ask the operations guys, what do you think about the materials guys? Are they an asset or something else? So that loss of trust then brings us all into this more than a vicious circle, a vicious vortex, right? That every time something fails, you lose trust and you start stashing materials. And I've seen these stashing materials to protect yourself, or building ahead, or having piles of inventory. All that comes from that loss of trust, because you cannot trust that the operations guys will do their part because their line just cannot perform. The materials guys will do their part because their systems just do not perform. That's where I think things can really end up going wrong.
In a mixed model environment, the third from the bottom, muda, mura, muri. Okay, waste, overburdening, right, overloading, or unevenness are characteristics that can really bite you in a mixed model environment specifically. Because again, and I touched on this earlier, when you have different products and different work content, the idea that you can level the workload in the face of a mix of products, different products, is basically not possible. Overloading is easy when the mix changes if it wasn't designed properly to begin with. So these are critical issues that are especially risky when you get into a mixed model environment that we address as part of the process, right, of designing a well-performing line.
And sometimes, even when we find a line that is not half bad, it is reasonably well balanced. This is not too bad. This happens many times. The first time we visit the potential client, and then we look at how they deliver materials. We find lots of materials delivered in bulk. People walking around hunting for parts, having to bend over into pallets or boxes to get parts. That is one place where people just drop the ball. People just drop the ball, and they don't continue the good work they may have done with the line into the materials organization. And that's something, again, I have to tip my hat to the folks at Toyota, because every time I am lucky to go there, we've been doing this 4 times a year for a while. Every time I see something new, something improved, and that is just a credit to how they do business.
Okay.
Business strategy. You want to design that well-balanced engine for what? To be part of a strategy. What's a strategy? Is that plan designed to achieve a major overall aim, right? You want that engine to support a strategy, right? That's our goal. It's not just, we have a great line. What for? Right? For fun? No. Right? So what for? To improve quality and lead times, but in the end is to be more profitable, to increase market share, to improve the well-being of the people that work for you, and to create jobs. That's our aim, is to use that engine, that well-designed engine, as the heart of our business strategy. If you're a manufacturing company, that's what you should be thinking about.
And remember that strategy implies that this is coming from the top, right, or supported from the top of an organization. If you're in a department and you want to make an improvement and you want to make changes that quite possibly people are going to oppose, right? At least some people might oppose. It's going to be very difficult to make those kind of changes if you don't have that direction from the top, or the North Star vision supported from the top of the organization. So oftentimes when we visit companies, there's a lot of enthusiasm for lean, but it's at a lower level in the organization. And if you really want, if they really want to do what needs to be done to improve based on lean principles or the Toyota production system, they're going to need to have not just lip service, but actual commitment at the top of the organization. And that's kind of what we mean by strategy, as opposed to silo type improvements or departmental improvements. So the implication here of even using the word strategy is that it's coming from the top of the organization and then down. And that's also the kind of the essence of Hoshin Kanri, right? That you have a vision at the top that gets propagated throughout the organization, ideally even down to the line workers, right? Or the lower levels in the organization, all moving in the same direction. Matter of fact,
if you get a chance, I would love for one of you to post a question for Tom that he will answer gladly. How does the day start and end every day at Toyota Material Handling? And let's see what's the commitment from the top.
Okay. So these are kind of like before and after, I guess, or one option and then a better option on the left and right part of the screen. So
exactly.
Kaizen.
Yeah, you go, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, Kaizen, we've talked about that before, how important that is, but Kaizen is not a business strategy, or Kaizen could very well be a departmental silo point solution kind of effort, which you don't want it to be. So Kaizen as continuous improvement, but bigger than that. There's actually a word that people use, Kaizen, kaikaku, so kind of big change, and that's kind of the direction in which we're wanting to think. So Kaizen by itself is necessary, maybe tweaking or improvement in small changes, but the actual original line design or material delivery system was designed from the ground up, and shouldn't require major changes after it's implemented. Jim Womack had a good article a few years ago about Kaizen as rework, right? Kaizen should not be a rework program.
Now, please don't misunderstand us. We're not saying Kaizen is bad. Kaizen is absolutely awesome. All right, awesome. But our experience in decades of doing this is that you cannot design a great line by Kaizen. You start with a very good line, and then you make it excellent with Kaizen. The same with eliminating waste. If you eliminate waste here and there, and it's not in the service of improving flow, you're leaving money on the table. Everything must be in the service. Everything. Improvements must be in the service of improving flow. And also, for those of you focused on reducing labor, focus on respect for people. That's where you're going to get the majority of the productivity. And don't look for the small incremental improvements without starting with a solid foundation. Start with a solid foundation and apply the incremental improvements to it. Please don't misunderstand. Kaizen is good, is excellent, but you will see that in terms of financial benefit, it's like 90-10. 90% is the major projects, 10% is Kaizen.
Okay. Wow. So here's a checklist of all the, not all, but a lot of the elements of designing the perfect workflow and designing the perfect material flow. These are elements or requirements that are included in our courses. So ordinarily, if we were live here at Toyota Material Handling, we would be teaching this kind of stuff, right? In an all day, 3 days, 3 day, all day workshops. One thing I'll mention right now is that we've taken the courses that we teach at Toyota and we put them online. So these are available to you without actually having to go to Toyota, although it's a great experience and we hope to be able to do that in the future. But this is the methodology that we teach, some of the elements that if you want to become a mixed model designer or a material flow designer, these are the elements that you need to really understand and learn at a deep level. I'm sure a lot of these are going to be familiar to you.
Yeah, and what you see here is just a quick list that we put together to fit on a slide, right? To make the point that there are two wings to this bird, right? The line will not fly unless it's properly designed, well linked and balanced, and supplied with materials. Unless you do both, you're going to be limping along. And even for folks that do a decent job with the line design, they tend to drop the ball when it comes to materials. And rarely do I walk into a potential client or a brand new client and I say, hey, where's the PFEP plan for every part? And they can hand it to me. It just doesn't exist. And the definition of a replenishment profile for every part, as you should do, rarely I am greeted by that. So you will see that these two tracks start from the same place, same products, same processes, right? And same volumes. And then divert and they get back together for the actual CAD layout and the deployment plan. You're going to see that these tracks start together, they divert, and they come back together for the ultimate line design. That is the process that we have designed and we have taught. And the class that takes us 3 days to teach at Toyota is divided into 22 lessons. And is one thing we notice online is that things go faster, so it's only 12 hours of instruction, but then there are all the hands-on exercises, and for those of you who choose the certification track, there are the coaching sessions, and then for those of you who choose our programs, then there are the 16 weeks of weekly calls. So 2 wings to this bird: materials and process, and without both, the line will not fly.
Will not fly. Okay, so we went out to our list, our email list, And most of the people on our email list, maybe some of you listening are on that list. We went out about 2 years ago, I would say, and we asked a question. We did a survey, and we asked a number of questions, but one of them was, how confident are you about your skills in designing a mixed model line? Assuming that you're a lean professional, right? You've made a career out of this. You're a lean specialist. Maybe some of the people on the survey were actual consultants. Others were maybe internal consultants or internal lean folks. And the response we got was this: about 18% either said very confident or yeah, pretty confident, right? Not very, but okay. That was 18%. The rest said not very confident or I have no idea, right? Never heard of it. I don't even know what this is. So that's a little bit shocking, given all that we've talked about so far. It's a little bit shocking because what we're talking about here is a foundational skill. And I didn't clear this with you, Gerard, but I'm going to throw something out here to the group. What if lean had never happened, right? Toyota had never evolved. There was no Taichi Ono. These things never actually happened, but we did have a mixed model line design, or we did have industrial engineering methods like this. I would be willing to say that if you did nothing but mixed model line design from a manufacturing point of view, you're going to achieve the vast majority of the benefits of lean by doing those things, these things, mixed model line design. Without lean or without any of these great things that have evolved through lean, but just applying the basics. So it's like having a football team. How good could your football team do if you didn't have a lot of the fancy stuff, but you had basic blocking and tackling? Well, you're going to go pretty darn far, right? If your team is strong in the basics. So that's, I think, the point we're trying to make here. If you're a lean specialist, this is something that needs to be in your toolkit, not in a minor way. It needs to be up front and center, because this is most of where the benefits are going to be coming from, is mixed model manufacturing, right? Materials and workflow.
The term lean, we use it because them folks at MIT were pretty good in the branding department, right? But you and I, Richard, we both precede lean. The title of our first book, we refused to use the term lean for it, right? It was the fundamentals of flow manufacturing. It is flow manufacturing. At Toyota, they use the term lean every now and again just to humor us, but to them it's the Toyota production system, and it existed way before someone coined the term lean manufacturing, Dr. Womack. So it's not about lean. In Dr. Womack was clear, and they say, hey, you're misunderstanding me. This is not just all this continuous improvement and elimination of waste. The folks at Toyota, they focus on designing a good line. And that is what we are asking you to consider. That's our call to action. It is possible to learn and apply these methods. The folks at Toyota have been doing it for a very long time. And by all measures, they are the most successful manufacturing company in the history of man. So it is possible. And as you will see when Tom takes his mask off, he's remarkably human. He's not, right? Like all his colleagues, he's remarkably human. So, but as Tom will say too, he's been at it for 30 years. So yeah, it's reasonable that he is as good as he is.
Yeah. And I actually asked Tom this last time I was at the Toyota plant. I made some comment along the lines of, there are a lot of aspects of lean that don't get talked about that much, actually. Specifically, the basics of industrial engineering. And he said, yeah, that's probably true. And the reason is, at least at Toyota, the reason that it's not talked about as much is it's assumed, right? It's when you come into that organization, we're assuming that you have those basic skills. And I said, well, that's great. You're assuming it here, but in a lot of places that we go to, those skills are not there, right? Not there yet. So again, those of you watching, by the way, there are 211 people online right now. Those of you watching, you can ask yourself, how strong are my skills, and if they can be improved. That's something that you really need to take seriously, because this
definitely they can be improved by training and application. Definitely.
Yeah. There we go. Kaizen your skills.
Yeah. So
all right.
I'm sure that you have seen a version of this, and we just picked this one as one of them, House of Lean, right? But with only one objective, is to show you the addition that we put here, and that is mixed model line design. That solid foundation. Without a foundation, everything else is going to stand on shaky ground, and is going to be a lot of work and frustration to keep it going. So don't worry about everything that's written in there. That's just one of them standard House of Lean that, sometimes they even have typos.
Yeah, there are a lot of choices for pictures of House of Lean. It's great.
Yeah,
Some of them are simple. Some of them look like Greek temples. Some of them have hundreds of little, elements.
But our point is the foundation. The foundation is a solid line design. That's what it is.
Okay. So in case you're thinking, well, who is there anyone who's actually doing this? Well, we know Toyota is, and you're going to see this with your own eyes, but who out there is practicing mixed model manufacturing? And this is based on, companies we've actually worked with and been to. So I'm sure there are a lot more. So don't feel left out, right? If you're thinking, well, my company is doing this, it's probably that we're just not familiar.
We needed to fit it in one slide, right?
Yeah.
So we have many more examples. But when it comes to different types of industries, yes, you will see the industrial equipment. You will see high volume and low volume, and high customization, low customization, and the one I want you to focus on, because it's very near dear to my heart: hospitals. I'm implementing the same principles in hospitals with great success. Not only that, one of our claims to fame as consultants of hospitals is the design of entire new buildings, and all these principles we are applying to our designs of hospitals. Yeah. So then again, I'll
yeah, and when on my tombstone, probably what I'd like to see there is it's on the list here of example companies, Fender musical instruments, and what we can say on there is, and Tom will appreciate this as well, but Epitaph is first person to introduce Lean to Fender musical instruments, which I think is a true statement.
If Richard were to zoom out, you would see his collection of guitars in the background, and he's still crying about having sold his 1960-something Sunburst Stratocaster.
Yeah, for $175. For $175. Oh well, let's continue on. We're getting off track here. There are two elements of the Toyota production system that Tom will be talking about. That I just wanted to mention that they seem to be not followed as closely by a lot of organizations as some of the other principles. One of them is clearly respect for people. Example of that, I believe that in the downturn, the 2008 economic downturn, at Toyota Material Handling, no permanent employees, full-time employees were laid off. And we know, again, by personal experience, that that's not the case in some of their competitors. And what happened when the industry came back is that Toyota was able to hit the ground running much more quickly than many of their competitors, and they continue to grow market share year upon year. So, but this is a big subject. It's not one that we're focusing on in mixed model manufacturing so much. Huge opportunities in this area, but it's something that remains as a great opportunity out there in the world, right? To learn from Toyota and learn from what people are doing in this area.
I think that Toyota does well. They definitely do respect for people. Well, they don't just talk about it; they do it well. But the other one is one-by-one production, but not only in the way that the product flows, but also in the way that material flows. That's where I think they They definitely are a shining star. So these are two places where we see that people like to talk about these principles, but not really carrying all the way through.
Yep.
So we're coming to the end of our point, and a couple of things. Computer simulation, that's one that definitely we're teaching. We've been teaching for a while. We don't have time to teach it during our classes because it is another 3-day class. But the point that we make with computer simulation, and we have been adopting it more and more, is that when you design a line, the way we teach you, you will do what we call paper balancing. Paper is actually in Excel, paper balancing, and then you balance it again when you're live. That leaves you a gap that is covered by an opportunity to do it for a third time, and that is you minimize risk by building a simulation model and balancing one more time before you bring it live. That when you bring it live, the risk of having an imbalanced line is greatly diminished, which brings us to our call to action for you. So think about it. Do you really know how to design mixed model line? Do you know how to design a mixed model material system? Is your line a competitive advantage or not? Is your materials organization a competitive advantage or not? All these questions at Toyota, they're all, yeah, of course. Their lines are definitely a competitive advantage. Their material system are a competitive advantage, and their folks know how to design lines. All this can be done. All this can be learned. That is what we do. We teach you, and through application, coming to class, we love for you to be in class, but you have to apply it. You need to look for that opportunity to apply it, implement it, make it yours. This is our call to action for you. Get the training and go look for that opportunity to implement it.